struggling through the mud to find food and water. The trail of Cyclone Idai stopping everyone in their tracks. The storm swept inland at speeds of up to 170 kilometers per hour last week, hitting Mozambique, then its inland neighbors Zimbabwe and Malawi.
It's nature showing its strength, and we need to accept that and find strength ourselves after the rain to stand up and move forward.
Turning streets into rivers, the floodwaters have taken over nearly 300 square kilometers of land in central Mozambique. The Red Cross say at least 400,000 people have been made homeless in the area.
I was with my children inside our home talking because it was raining, and then we heard the mountain exploding, and then the water started flowing through the streets and reached our house when we had to run away.
Air rescuers have been picking up stranded survivors where they can. A Red Cross worker said the full cost of the storm in all meanings is only just emerging. The World Food Programme is rushing food and other assistance to large numbers of desperate people. And Red Cross workers in Beira are calling it the worst humanitarian crisis in Mozambique's history. Freddie Tennyson, Euronews.
Well, let's pick up on something Freddie said there and put it to Matthew Cochrane, who's a spokesperson from the Red Cross. He joins us now from Geneva. Morning to you, Mr. Cochrane. Thanks very much for joining us. At the end of Freddie's report there, he talked about the fact that you, the Red Cross, have said that this is the worst humanitarian disaster in Mozambique's recent history. What makes you say that?
Well, we really have to look back to 2000 for Cyclone Helene, I think it was called, for a disaster of comparable scale. That disaster claimed, I think, about 700 lives and displaced about 400,000. So already on those numbers, unfortunately, the tragedy that's currently unfolding in Mozambique has exceeded that. But then, as your colleague pointed out, we don't yet know the full picture of this disaster. It's probably going to be days before we really understand just how devastating this has been for central Mozambique.
Just tell us what your teams on the ground, not only in Mozambique, but also in Malawi, in Zimbabwe, have been finding.
Well, I mean, the damage in Mozambique, to start with, in Beira, has been incredibly severe. Our team estimated over the weekend that 90% of buildings have been severely damaged or destroyed in Beira, which is home to about 500,000 people. It's by no means a small city. And then the areas outside of Beira, I think, are becoming more and more a concern. Whole areas that are just simply completely underwater, where there were homes and roads and trees, is now just large expanses of water. So the impacts there are incredibly severe. Further to the west in Zimbabwe, there's been dozens of people who've been killed by flash flooding. I think one of the things that is really important about this, we talk about this as a disaster as a result of a cyclone, and to an extent that's true, but there's actually a convergence of factors here. There's been heavy rain across parts of southern Africa for weeks, and that water in Zimbabwe and Malawi has only one direction to go, which is into Mozambique. So when Idai hit last week and brought with it more rain and heavy winds, people were perhaps trapped between the waters coming from the west and the storm and storm surge that was coming from the east. And as the president of Mozambique has reported, for many people, they just had nowhere to go.
We've been seeing pictures of people taking refuge on top of roof buildings, waiting there. We don't know how long for. How long are they waiting there, and why is it taking so long to try and rescue them from these places?
We're talking about quite a large geographical area, I understand, so it's going to take time to reach people. We also, it's a water operation. I heard colleagues from the UN describe it that way yesterday. This is the only way to reach many of these areas is by helicopter, and the South African government has come forward and made available 6 helicopters, I think, for Mozambique authorities, which is a tremendous show of solidarity. I understand as well that there's a lot of work happening to try and procure and secure boats so they can get out. It's going to take time because it's difficult to reach people and because the areas that are affected are quite spread out.
All right, well, thank you very much. Matthew Cochrane there from the International Red Cross. Cyclone Idai has been described as one of the worst ever related disasters to hit the Southern Hemisphere, and questions are being asked this morning about its relation to global warming. I spoke earlier to Amnesty International's Muleya Mwananyanda about this.
Yeah, we do think that man-made climate change is really at the center of this. And the reason that we think that governments really ought to do something about it to mitigate the impact is that if it's man-made, it means that man can also unmake it. And so we do think that man-made impacts are a big role in this.